Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, as often is the case when I think about doing an episode of the show, it's I have this kind of like, what am I going to do this week? And it often entails digging through boxes and pulling out samples, checking tasting notes and all that kind of stuff. So it's really nice when a tasting sort of falls in your lap, so to speak. And which this one has. The other day, the rep from Gordon MacPhail and the Ben Romack distillery dropped into the shop saying, "I've got some samples for you," and I'm thinking, yeah, excellent. I haven't got to sort of think too hard about what I'm going to do today. So funnily enough, it's Ben Romack. So as per usual, let's start with a little bit of waffle. The distillery itself, if I can find the page, was founded in 1898 in actual fact. Got the page now. By the Ben Romack Distillery Company. It went through a number of hands, including the National Distillers of America apparently in 1938. It's been silent for a while until 1993 when Ben Romack purchased the distillery. Gordon MacPhail purchased the distillery. It was one of the first distilleries actually to be, or maybe wrong in this, but as far as I'm aware, I think it was one of the first distilleries to be purchased by an independent bottling company. And since then, a number have been bought by the independents, primarily, obviously, to have stocks of whiskey. Considering you've got several markets around the world that seem to be gobbling it up, should we say? But anyway, the distillery itself is fairly small. It according to the book, it is the smallest working distillery in Speyside, with the capacity for 500,000 litres. Apparently at the moment only a couple of people actually work in production at the distillery, so the production is roughly around about a quarter of that. Pretty much all the spirit goes into their own bottlings. Very little of it goes for blending, and it's a nice whiskey at the end of the day. So I think that's enough of that, and shall we have a look at this afternoon's lineup? Right, okay, Ben Romack. Well, I've tasted it on a few occasions, and I certainly think that this one here, the Ben Romack Traditional, is a lovely all-round gentle Speyside malt. Obviously has no age statement, which allows it to be retailed at, if memory serves me correct, sort of around about the 26, 27, 28 pound mark, which is for the quality pretty bloody good in my opinion. So that's the first one we'll be looking at, the Ben Romack Traditional, bottled at 40%. This one is the cask strength Ben Romack. It was distilled in 2002. I think it was bottled last year, I think, if memory is certainly correct. So making it around about 10-year-old at 59.9%. Then we're jumping up the age statements. This is the Ben Romack 30-year-old bottled at 43%. And finally we'll finish off with this one here, which is the current bottling of the Ben Romack Peat Smoke, which was distilled I think in 2004 and bottled last year. So quite an interesting little tasting, I think you'll agree, and we might as well make a start with the traditional. I searched every face. Right, like I said, I mean, it's been a while since I've tasted the traditional. I think probably something in the region of about 4 years in actual fact. And at the time I remember thinking it's a lovely light, Very typical Speyside whisky. So, you know, shall we see if the nose is still thus, as they say? It's an attractive nose actually. It's got a lot of lemon, a lot of citrus character. A little bit of refill sherry possibly in the mix. It's certainly got a sort of a refill sherry richness to it. Plenty of barley, a little bit of grass. Probably not quite as fresh as I remember it, but I think I certainly don't remember it having that sort of sherried richness. But it's certainly an attractive nose. Elegant, a little bit of grist. You know, youthful, obviously, but certainly none of that sort of youthful kind of Mari cereal notes that you often tend to find with, you know, young spirit and sort of no age statement spirits that have a high proportion of young spirit in, shall we say. So, like I said, really pleasantly peppery, fresh. Yeah, that's an attractive and really pleasant nose. So. Palate. Quite full, quite rich. Again, it has what appears to be some refill sherry richness, which is giving a lot more body than I certainly remember it. Quite peppery. It's got a very light sort of pulped fruit kind of character. Yeah, more pepper, a little bit of spice. It's a little bit short. Certainly at the finish you get quite a bit of citrus and a little bit of minerality, which is kind of shortening it a little bit, but it does kind of like sort of say, yeah, there's a reasonable degree of youthful spirit in there. But I think that's really pleasant. It's certainly very, very enjoyable, and yeah, I think for sub 30 quid, I think you can do a lot worse than that. So yeah, that's really enjoyable. Pleasant starter, shall we say. Right, okay, so let's take a look at the cast strength Ben Romac then, shall we? See what the nose gives us on this. Quite high toned, neutral, sort of vodka-y almost in character. It's very light. It's got a sort of almost kind of tequila-like sort of pepperiness to it. A little bit of that sort of pulped, almost kind of agave kind of character that I certainly found on the Tradition. Lots of creamy vanillins, very, very high tone, lots of alcohol, getting a lot of alcohol prickle. It's not amazingly complex, it has to be said. It's relatively straightforward. It's young. It's raw is not the word, but it's certainly certainly pretty intense. Like I said, it's a lot of spirit character, a lot of wood. Yeah, not quite totally integrated, I don't think. Right then. Again, a lot of alcohol, a lot of pepperiness, a little bit of spice, but it's just palate's just hit by all this alcohol. There's a little bit of oak there as well, but as you can't really see an awful lot beyond all of that that alcohol. So it's pretty drying stuff. And I think that definitely needs a little drop of water. So that's what we'll do. We'll put a little drop of water with it and see what that does to it. Right, let's see what the nose does. White fruits, quite grassy, getting that sort of slight sort of Sauvignon Blanc-y kind of grassiness now. Again, a little bit of that sort of pulped fruit, but it's certainly more spade in character now that you've had a little drop of water. Quite grassy, a little bit of citrus, a lot less oak, but it's got a little bit of a sort of crystallised fruit sweetness now. Yeah, it's pleasant enough, I guess. Let's see what the palate does now. Really sweet now. Again, fresher, cleaner, citrusy. Still has that little bit of sort of tequila-y kind of peppery pulped fruit, but a lot sweeter, a lot sort of granulated sugar now. Pretty short. Still, even though I put quite a fair bit of water in that, in actual fact, the alcohol is still drying out the finish. It's okay. Personally, I think I would go with the tradition. It's certainly all American oak aged, and the oak has kind of like disappeared now. You've put a little drop of water with it, but yeah, it's pleasant enough. It's good spirit. Just think that could have done a little bit longer in the cask, I think. Right, okay, on to the 30-year-old. I don't think you can probably level the some criticism to this that it hasn't spent long enough in the oak. So let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Oh, that's gorgeous. That is stunningly good. Wonderful maturity to it. Sort of a little bit of sawdusty oak, some marmalade, orange rind, very liquor-like. It's just sort of not treacly, but sort of honeyed, sort of orange-infused honey. Little bit of a pepper note. Oh, that's just so nice. Really clean, really deep. Little floral note now, maybe a smidgen of violet possibly. Some lovely crumbly spices, a little bit of chocolate. That is fantastically good. A Again, wonderful richness and depth to the aromas. A little bit of a herbal note coming out now, but it's just that sort of wonderful sort of sawdusty oak and honey that's the mainstay of the aromas, and it really has some sublime depth, it has to be said. Really juicy. A little bit of coffee now. I said a little bit of sort of chocolate. That is good. That's stunningly good stuff. About then. Oh, that's heavenly. It's mature, but it's not over mature. It's got vibrancy. got again, that sort of slightly marmalade-y, honey kind of character is definitely there. Sawdusty oak, dense spices, silky, it's just smooth, it's soft, it's rolls around the tongue really, really nicely. Real delicacy, but you know, got some weight to it. And like I said, like the nose, it's got a lovely sort of honeyed citrus kind of character. Little bit of oak coming through on the finish, adding a little bit of sort of like bitter chocolate, some spices, but it's got a really fresh finish. Again, the sort of the citrus kind of holds out right on the finish. That is just such a lovely, lovely balanced old Speyside malt. Some can certainly get very, very oaked, and you get a lot of sort of the sawdusty oak and sort of spices and that kind of thing, which is really appealing, absolutely wonderful. I mean, I've tasted some lovely old Grengrants and things like that, which have that sort of lovely old oak kind of character. But a lot of them don't tend to have that sort of fresh citrus element that the Benromach certainly has, and that is absolutely gorgeous. I'm still tasting it now. In actual fact, I mean, talk about long. Absolutely gorgeous. Right then, okay, on to the final whiskey of the afternoon, the peat smoke. This is batch number 4, apparently peated to 53 parts per million, which is pretty heavy in the peat stakes, shall we say. It was quite interesting because when they released batch number 1, several years ago now, I remember tasting it and thinking it was a bit like the Benromach Curiositas. It was peated, but it didn't taste like an Islay. It had sort of it didn't have the sort of like the saltiness, the fishiness, and it had sort of like, you know, a nice kind of Speyside fruit character that underpinned all that peatiness. And then batch number 2 came out, and it was very, very Coal Ila-like in character, very, very coastal, very briny, as was batch number 3, and I imagine that a lot of it's down to where the actual peated barley actually came from. I mean, certainly it had a distinct Islay-y kind of character, and I know certainly that I forget the name of the peat bog, because even though I've only just written an article about peat bogs, certainly the peat bog that is near Tomintoul certainly has a tendency to be a little bit on the Islay kind of character. Certainly if you taste the old Ballatruan, it comes across with a distinctly Islay peat kind of character. Although it is an inland, well, it's not inland, it's coastal, it's relatively near to the coast, although I think the makeup is certainly more heathery, and this could be sort of like, you know, a reason why it has a sort of an Islay kind of character, because certainly the two peat bogs on Islay are very, very similar in their sort of phenolic makeup, shall we say. So just it depends. It depends where the malting's got the peat from that particular batch. I can certainly remember the rep saying that Benromach weren't as keen on batch 2 because it had too much of an Islay character, and it was less of a peated Spey in character. And I remember them saying when they released batch number 3 that it was back to how batch number 2 was, number 1 was, but it wasn't. It was more like batch 2. You know, it just tasted like pretty much like Coal Ila. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, whether batch 4 is kind of gone back to the style of batch number 1 being more a peated spey, or is it more like batch 2 and 3 and you know, distinctly either in character. So anyway, I'll shut up and stick my nose in the glass and find out for you, shall I? Mid-ground, I would say. Bit of fence sitting there, I suppose, but no, it's certainly got a sort of a more drier kind of peat character, a little bit more of a sort of woody peat character, although there is a little bit of a medicinal note there, but it's certainly certainly doesn't come across like coal eeler. There's more density to this spirit, a lovely honeyed character sort of underlying all of that. I mean, you know, for something that is relatively heavily peated, I mean, 53 parts is relatively heavy. I mean, if you forget about Octomore and all the sort of like the ridiculously huge peating levels, you know, this is peated to about a sort of similar level to Lefroy, but it's got a nice balance, a nice elegance, some really nice citrus fruit, some orange. Yeah, and the peat, like I said, has a kind of like burnt woody kind of character to it, and you know, is not the main focal point of it. It is not a peat monster, although there is a lot of peat. But you know, it's just so nicely balanced with the sort of like the, you know, the Speyside fruit underneath. I love this. I mean, I think it's stunningly good. And I think sort of, you know, if you like your peated malts, if you like things like coal eeler and Ardbeg and all that kind of stuff, and want to try something a little bit different, then have a look at this. I mean, you know, when I did my research for the article I wrote for the Arcade magazine, our magazine, you know, traditionally Scotland used a lot of peat. So did the Speyside district. It was only when, with the advent of the railways and coke production, that it became cheaper to use that rather than use the peat that was in the locale, shall we say. And blenders wanted to change as well. You know, the style of whiskey was moving away from those sort of heavily peated blends into a more sort of elegant, delicate sort of style. But this is a throwback whiskey, you know, when you think about it. You know, this is going back to the style of the Speyside whiskies from, you know, the 1800s, you know, or sort of like mid to late 1800s, and you know, it's lovely, and it's got a more, it's probably got a more modern twist. I imagine that sort of, certainly having tasted sort of the Shackleton's malt, for example, which consists of a large degree of Old Glenmore, which had that kind of old, pervasive, peaty sort of kind of character, sort of dusty. This has a sort of a lovely vibrancy, a lovely freshness, and yeah, okay, it's got a little bit of medicinal character, but it's just that lovely citrus lift to it. This is actually a lovely nose, and yeah, I really like that. And I'm going to shut up and taste the palate. That's lovely. It opens up with the citrus, the lemon, which is the character of Ben Romack, as we've discovered. Lovely freshness, a bit of herbalness, and then the peat comes a-rolling in. You know, it's dry, it's dusty. There's a little bit of medicinal peat quality there. Really long. and then as that sort of peat sort of gently sort of fades, you're getting a little bit of sort of the pepperiness, a little bit of the spiciness. Not a huge amount of oak, it has to be said. It's more kind of like there, if you see what I mean, than adding sort of, you know, loads of vanillins and toffee and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's obviously been aged in fairly well used American oak casks, so not imparting a huge amount of vanillin, but, you know, giving it some structure, giving it some body. Yeah, I like that. I think that is really, really nice. So, like I said, you know, if you like your peated malts, it's not particularly expensive, mid to late 30s, I think. Definitely worth a look. So, yeah, enjoyable, really nice. Right, okay, so let's sum up this little tasting then. Ben Romac. It's really quite nice in actual fact. I think we've seen that the Ben Romac characteristic is light, very citrusy, and quite peppery in character. You know, it's a really nice typical Speyside whisky, I think. The tradition, it's fattened up a little bit over the years. I think they're using a little bit more sherry cask now. Not a bad thing. It's certainly not tipped it over the edge. It still has that sort of lovely freshness to it. It's probably got a bit more body, a little bit more weight than it used to have, which I guess at the end of the day is no real bad thing. So really, really nice. The cask strength didn't really quite do it for me. I mean, yes, there's no sherry. It's all American oak. It's a little bit on the raw side. Although it is probably showcasing more of the distillery character in that it's a lot more fresher. It just wasn't quite all gelling together, and certainly tasting neat. It was just, you know, too alcoholic, and you didn't get anything other than pretty much alcohol on the palate. Putting a little drop of water with it, you know, certainly softened it, brought out more of the Speyside character, but it shortened it. You know, there wasn't really any wood notes. Not a bad whiskey, but it's certainly not one that, you know, given the choice of the two, to be frankly honest with you, I think I would go with the tradition. So, you know, like I said, not bad, but, you know, it's not one that I would sort of look to put on the shelves. Ben Romac 30-year-old. Well, it's, to be honest with you, it's the first time I've tasted an old Ben Romac, or certainly a Ben Romac of that kind of age. And my God, that ages really well. I mean, that is stunningly good. It still retains that lovely freshness, the citrus character that I was talking about. But you add in some sort of some mature honey, some mature oak, some sawdusty oak, and you know, that is just a wonderful malt. So, you know, although currently I don't stock this particular whiskey, so, but you know, I will certainly be adding that one to the list. So keep an eye out for that one. And finally, peat smoke. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like my peated whiskies, as you well know. I like my Lafroig, I like Ardbeg, etc., etc. And I like this. Like I said, it's a throwback whiskey. It's you know, whiskey that was how it was made in the Speyside distillery, you know, donkey's years before most of us were born, or probably all of us were born in actual fact. And yeah, it's nice. Again, you know, it's not. It is heavily peated, but it's not blanketing the distillery character. The distillery character of that sort of fresh citrus just comes through in spades. And it's just wonderfully balanced. And like I keep saying, you know, at the end of the day, that is the most important factor in a whiskey. Is it balanced? Does it have, you know, the breadth of flavours? You know, I keep going on about it, but that, you know, at the end of the day, that for me is what defines a great whiskey is balance. And I think, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be very old. It just, you know, I've tasted not so great whiskies that are very, very old and very expensive, you know. So basically, just balance. that's the key there, and the peat smoke, I think, is just wonderfully balanced. It's got peat, it's got smoke, it's got fruit, it's got character. You know, what more can you ask for? So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this this episode of the show. Like I said, all my notes on most of these whiskies are available on my WordPress blog, although this is the first time I've posted that. I haven't had a chance to get my notes typed up and on there, but certainly the ones that I'm particularly keen on are available on our website, www.gauntleys.com. I hope this little tasting will sort of get you interested to taste the Ben Romack range. I mean, they also do a 10-year-old, which again is a lovely balanced whiskey. It has American oak, sherry cask, a little bit of peat, and is pretty popular. I mean, in actual fact, that the tradition was for a while, our best-selling single malt. Yes, partly due to the price point, but partly also down to the quality of it. People were coming back for it. They liked it. And at the end of the day, what more can you say? So anyway, I'll stop rambling and say good afternoon and good ram.